All right, John, if you want to take over, you can.
Well, good evening, everybody. It is good to see all of you. And we're going to have a fun evening tonight, too. First, a couple of announcements. There are English State Bank calendars back there, like this. And they've got some really nice pictures for each of the communities in the county. It's really nice keepsakes. So we got the last stash of them, so feel free. Next month is the 250th birthday anniversary of our country, and we're going to do something to reflect that. Next month, if you come, you will find out about Revolutionary War soldiers from Crawford County. Did you know there were? There were several. So we're going to learn about those Revolutionary War soldiers. And number two, we're going to share with you some interesting and little-known facts about some of the patriotic anthems of our country. So prepare to be amazed. Now, speaking of being amazed, we were planning on Donna Schultz being here tonight. And many of you know Donna, and she was a teacher in the school system in Patoka. She lives here in the county, done a lot of amazing things, but she sent somebody in her place. Abigail Stanley is here tonight, and Abigail is going to share with us some things about the Underground Railroad and quilts and how they are connected. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I am so glad to see this many people in a meeting like this. Now, John has assured me that this meeting is safe. And we're going to talk about in just a few minutes why that meeting has to be safe. I help with something that some of you may be familiar with and some of you may not. But you have to be very, very cautious about who you share this information with and who you try to get to help you. Because if we get caught helping with this, what we're going to talk about, if we get caught helping with this, I live on a farm with my family, and we could lose our whole farm. If we get caught, we could be put in jail. And if they put us in jail, the fine is going to be $500 or more. I can't pay $500. I will lose my farm if we get caught. So I have to know that I can trust everybody in this room to keep our secrets. And that everybody else in this room can trust each other. Because if you get caught, if they find out that you're helping us, you will be in trouble too. And you could get arrested. Or you could get arrested and put in jail and lose everything you have. So some of you may know what we're talking about already. What we're talking about is the Underground Railroad. And for those of you that don't know what the Underground Railroad is, it is a system that goes from the south to the north. It goes all the way to Canada to help slaves escape from their plantation owners to safety and to freedom. We live in Indiana, and Indiana does not believe in slavery. But right across the river in Kentucky, they believe in slavery. So if we can get the slaves across the Ohio River into Indiana, they're still not safe, but it is a state that does not believe in slavery, so we have a lot more people who are willing to help us with these people to escape. They passed a law in Indiana called the Fugitive Slave Act that if you are caught helping, you will get, like I said, you will get fined. You could be put in jail. So, and they will take the slaves and return them to their owners. We all know what happens when they get returned to their owners if they try to escape. So that's not, we don't want that to happen. So we have to be able to trust each other that we're not going to get caught. This is a very, very large system that covers many states and things have to be hidden. Or some people say hidden in plain sight. Sometimes that's the easiest way to hide things. So we're going to talk today about, we're going to do a lot of information about how you can help and how you can be a part of the Underground Railroad. But we're going to talk about how quilts are used as signals. There are certain quilts or quilt blocks that are used a whole lot as signals on the Underground Railroad. And we'll get into all of those and how they're used, what their names are, and how they're used. So, to start with a little back history of me, like I said, I live on a farm. I have some sons, and we're going to talk about some of the things that those sons do to help us with our Underground Railroad. My name is Abigail Stanley, as John said, and nobody's ever heard of Abigail Stanley. Nobody knows who Abigail Stanley is. But I have a brother that some of you might have heard of. My brother is Levi Kaufman. And some of you may have heard of him. But he's very, very big on the Underground Railroad. Levi is what is called a station master. Levi has a house. Levi has a lot of kids. So Levi has a house that has a whole lot of bedrooms. It has a big yard, and in his yard is a well, and he has a fence around his yard. So it doesn't really stir up a lot of attention if they make multiple trips to the well to draw water, to bring water into the house. I mean, if you've got a lot of kids, you have to have a lot of water anyhow, because you have to do a lot of laundry, you have to do a lot of things, with those kids. But sometimes you kind of have snoopy neighbors that watch to see what you do, and we have to watch things like how much water do we bring into our home, how many baskets of things do we bring in, we have to kind of watch that kind of stuff. Well, Levi has all these kids, so nobody pays any attention to all that in his house. Same thing with baskets. We carry baskets, women carry baskets all the time, don't they? We have our sewing in them, we have our mending in them, we may be carrying eggs back and forth to market in them, we may go visit a neighbor who's sick and we take food in them. Nobody pays any attention to what's in our baskets. So it's an easy way to transport and move things that we need to use also. But like I said, Levi is a station master. There are people who actually go into the South and pick up the escaped slaves in certain spots, and those people are called conductors because they help transport them from one place to another. Conductor rides on a train, right? So the conductors help transport them from one place to another, to the station masters. All of us don't have names. I don't have a name. I'm not worthy of a name on the Underground Railroad. I'm just a helper. But a lot of people know my brother, so that's kind of a little introduction. I'm going to show you some quilt blocks as we go along, and they're all in this quilt that's hanging up here also. And they'll be sort of in the order that they are up here, and we'll talk about all of them. Now, if you are a slave on a plantation, most likely you've never left that plantation. You were probably born there, and you probably will die there. You don't know anything about life outside of the area your plantation covers. Most of them, not all. And we're going to talk a little bit about how some of them know a lot more information. But we're going to start, the first block that I have is called the Underground Railroad. You can see the railroad probably crossing through it. See those blocks that go in a train-like motion there. So we always just start with one, and if you are working on a plantation, you're a slave, and you're considering, you think you might want to plan an escape, because this is a big deal. It's not easy, They all know it's not easy. It's very, very dangerous, because if you get caught and you get brought back, it's not, you might survive, you might not. So lots of planning, lots of work goes into it to start with. So we will see as we go through this, different people hang quilts out, like on their front porch, on a railing, on a fence in front of their house, something like that. And a lot of these will be hung on homes that are located on the plantation, or some of them are used as they're making their way north. Back in our time period, we didn't have washing machines. We didn't have dryers. So you air your quilts. You hang them out on the porch. You hang them out on the fence to air them so that they're fresh and ready to put back on the bed. So it's really not a big deal to see a quilt hanging out on the front lawn, on the rail, on the fence or something. So it's not, like I said before, you don't want to give away who you are. That's not going to do it. Everybody hangs their quilts outside, so it's not a big deal. So you might first see a quilt, the whole quilt, not just one block, but the whole quilt made of this Underground Railroad pattern. And that kind of says, start watching, start paying attention, because there are going to be some signals, there are going to be some information that's passed on. But again, it's not just, I don't just walk up and tell you, okay? So the first one that probably is hung out is a monkey wrench. That's the name of this block. And the whole quilt would be all these blocks, a monkey wrench quilt. And a monkey wrench, what's monkey wrench mean? Monkey wrench is another name for the blacksmith on your plantation. He was called the monkey wrench. The blacksmith on your plantation is one of the few slaves who has been off that plantation. He's moved from place to place. A lot of plantations do not have enough money, or they're not large enough to have their own blacksmith. So they share. He moves from place to place. He's also a very talented, he has to learn specific things to do, and all of those plantations need that. So he moves from place to place. He's been other places. He knows what exists outside the area of the plantation that you may have grown up on and lived on your whole life. He knows where there are streams. He knows where there are mountains. He knows where there are towns, places that are easier to hide in, places that are harder to hide in, places that have, a lot of places have dogs that they chase the slaves with if they try to escape. So he knows a lot of this information. And when you see that quilt hung out, it means talk to the monkey wrench. Go talk to that blacksmith and see what he can tell you. He'll know what you're looking for, and he can share that information with you and really, really help you with planning the first steps and the first part of your escape. I got one out of order here. Maybe not. Okay. This one is a bear's paw. A lot of these plantations are located in areas where there are bears. By nature, bears are lazy. Bears don't want to do any more than they have to find food, water, and shelter. We can learn a lot from that. If we are making our way north, watch for where the bear's trails are. Find a bear's trail. It's going to be the easiest path to walk on. Bears are going to find water. Their paths are going to lead you to water, and probably even to maybe some places where there's honey or berries or things that you can eat. But they're not going to take the hardest path over the mountain, they're gonna find the easiest pathway over the mountain. So watch for bears' trails and find the bears' trails. Also, when do bears come out of hibernation? In the spring. When do bears go into hibernation? Late fall, early winter. When should you travel? Spring through late fall. Don't start traveling in late fall or early winter, because if the weather's too tough, bears know it. Bears are smart. They may be lazy, but they're smart, so they know what to do. So you follow the bear. The next one that you probably see out is a basket. You'll see a basket quilt. Now, there's some little differences here. Like I said earlier, we women carry our baskets everywhere. We have our baskets with our eggs, we have our baskets to go to the neighbors, we have our baskets with our sewing when we go to a quilting bee. We carry the baskets all the time. But a slave woman doesn't carry a basket. That's a class thing. And slave women don't carry baskets. So they're not going to carry a basket. But telling you to look at the basket is just kind of a way of saying you're going to need to prepare to take a few things. You're not going to be able to carry much. Same thing with the bonnets. We wear bonnets. Slave women do not wear bonnets. They're not allowed to wear bonnets. They wear a kerchief. So they can take that kerchief, an extra one, and they can tie it up, and they can carry some of their supplies in their kerchief. If they get caught, nobody's going to suspect they've got supplies to escape with in their kerchief. It's not much, but it's a little to get you started on your trip. So a slave woman's going to carry a kerchief. One of the plantation owners, she's going to wear a bonnet like mine. Another little secret about the bonnets. Most bonnets, my bonnet is not quite as big. Most of our bonnets are really big and come way, way out here, okay? You're gonna wear your bonnet when you're working outside. You don't wanna get a sunburn. You don't wanna get your face all tanned, because we don't do that. But, so we wear great big bonnets, way out here. It's also a good way to hide. We have a preacher that lives in our town, and he is part of our group. And that preacher goes out in the morning with his wagon. He's got two people sitting on the wagon beside him, two ladies with their bonnets and their baskets. And if anybody stops him, he'll say, "Oh, Sister Brown is really, really sick, and she needs help. She's got all those kids, and she can't take care of them because she's so sick. So I'm taking Sister Louise and Sister Mary out to help her, and they've got food to feed the kids, and they're gonna work in her house today for her, and then I'll bring them back. I'll go get them and bring them back late this evening, and then she'll be better. And if we need to, I'll take them back out again another day or two. But that'll just be, to help her today." And he goes back in the afternoon to get them. But he doesn't bring back the same two he took out. It really wasn't Sister Louise and Sister Mary. He took two people that were moving on to the next station, on to the next spot, and he picked up two more, and he brought them back. Another day, he'll take them back out again. But it's an easy way to hide, because we just keep our heads down, we keep our big bonnet out to cover our face, and it's a very easy way to hide. So a lot of things, like I said at the beginning, hidden in plain sight, hidden in plain view. It's not what you think you're seeing. So that's one of our ways that we do this. Another little thing that we do, I told you about, I have the sons. One of my sons has a store, little general store that has everything you need. You can go pick up whatever you need from his store. Another one of my sons has what's called a tinker wagon. The tinker wagon is loaded with everything you might need, but a lot of these plantations are located in places that are far away from a town. So, women may need thread, They may need cloth to knit clothing or to make quilts or blankets. The men may need nails. They may need things for the farm. That blacksmith may need some things. Women may need pots and pans. So my son that has the tinker wagon, all the stuff is stored and hanging on the outside and inside and everywhere on his wagon. And he goes from plantation to plantation selling wares to them. Whatever they might need is in his wagon. And he loads it up real full and he makes a trip and he makes a big circle and takes all the things, you know, that people need, and they go from place to place. Well, he has a little secret. Located in the bottom of his wagon, underneath the seats, underneath where he has all of his wares that he sells, is a compartment. And that compartment is big enough for 2 adults. So he may, when he goes from plantation to plantation, he starts talking to people and asking questions. And he's been to a lot of them before, so they know him, they trust him. And they may tell him, 2 plantations over to the south, you might have some baggage to carry back. So he goes to that plantation and he talks and he visits. Usually he'll wait until that's one of the last places he visits before he comes back home to reload his wagon. When he shows up at our house, he opens that compartment and those people get out, they spend the night with me, we move them on, and just like with the preacher or with somebody else, but we move them on. This part of Indiana is a perfect spot for all of these helpers. We live close to the river. The river is most definitely a crossing point, all the way, the whole width of the state of Indiana. The name Underground Railroad came kind of from a crossing like that. There was an escaped slave running through Kentucky. His name was Tice. And there were 2 slave catchers chasing him with dogs. It was at night. And they were running. He knew they were getting closer and closer because he could hear the dogs baying. He knew if he could get to the Ohio River, he'd been told that hidden along the edges of the river in the reeds, there was a rowboat that stayed there all the time, if he could get to it and find it. This is close to Madison. Up on the hillside, outside of Madison, there's a cabin. And that cabin, he was to look for, because it had a window up at the top of it. If there was one light burning in the window, it's safe to come here for him. If there are 2 lanterns burning, don't stop. Now, stop and think about it. Who puts a lantern in the window? You're not going to read by a lantern in the window. You're not going to sew at the table. You're not going to be even eating a meal with a lantern in the window. So that's highly unlikely that a lantern would just accidentally get put in the window. Tice is running. Tice gets to the river and he cannot find the rowboat. He's hunting, he hears the dogs getting closer and closer and closer. He cannot find the rowboat. He gets to a point where he turns around and he can actually see the slave catchers behind him. He's got to do something. He's going to be caught and taken back. So he slips into the water and goes under the water and hides. He manages to get far enough away that he can hide in the reeds and grasses until they give up and go back, which is a long time. The dogs don't find him because of the water. Because a lot of times we tell them, if you have a choice, walk through a stream, a creek, something, because that will throw your scent off. So Tice manages to stay hidden. The slave catchers turn around and go home. If you're that slave catcher, do you really want to explain to everybody that you uncovered, that you saw him, he was within your sight, and he got away? So the story goes, when they said, what happened? How did you lose him? They said it was like an underground railroad opened up and he slid into it. He was there, and the next minute he was gone, like an underground railroad opened up and he slid in. So that's one of the stories of how the name, the Underground Railroad, came about. But there really is a place at Madison with a cabin on the hill, with the light, and that is one of our signals that a lot of them watch for. There are many places here close to Crawford County, and in Crawford County where they crossed at Fredonia, they crossed at Alton, they came across the river, and many, many people in this county helped. They were like me. They were just people, regular people, farmers, and they didn't believe in slavery, so they helped. People like my sons that made those trips helped get them back to a certain point where we could move them on to other places. I used to be told all the time about a house that was at Leavenworth, up on the hillside, not down close to the river, up on the hillside, that was a big 2-story house, and when you looked upstairs, it just looked like they had a lot of kids, so it looked like just beds lining the walls. The roof sloped down, and the beds came to where the roof met the wall. If you slid the beds away from the wall, there were hidden doors that slid open, and under the eaves were places where they could hide slaves until it was safe to move them on to the next place, and they could go on. They could stay there, they could carry food. Just like I said with my brother Levi, they could carry food, they could carry clean clothes, they could carry things up and down the stairs and not be suspected. And then they could move them normally in the cover of darkness. So, just some of the ways that people help when people have done things. The next quilt that you're going to see is called the Crossroads. And when the slaves start making their escapes, they're going to go through a lot of larger cities that have lots of crossroads. So they have to be very, very cautious, very, very careful of where they go in those crossroads, that they are not seen. Most of the time, when they're going through larger cities or towns, they're going to hide along the outside edges until night. Most of the travel is done at night. You rest during the day if you have a good hiding place. But if you can hide along the outside edges of the towns, that's the best bet, and then try to make your way either through town or around town during the daytime or during the nighttime. A lot of the best hiding places around the edges of the towns are churches and cemeteries. Number one, a lot of the churches are like the preacher I was talking about. They've got people there who are going to help you. But at night, there's not many people around the church. And in cemeteries, some of the headstones are really, really large, and it's easy to hide behind, to stay hidden. So those were a lot of the places that they hid in and were fairly safe for their edge of town things. The next one has a really interesting story with it. This is a log cabin block. We've all seen log cabin quilts. It's no big deal. Everybody makes a log cabin quilt. If you're making quilts, you have to make a log cabin quilt. Everybody makes one. But there's something a little different about this log cabin quilt block. Does anybody know what it is? Okay. Most log cabin blocks have a red center. The square in the center is almost always red. Once in a while it's yellow. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute too. But most of the time it's red. This one has a black center. The reason most log cabin quilts have a red center is because it's the hearth of the home. It stands for the fireplace. and that's the hearth of your home. And if you're making a log cabin quilt, you want to make it authentic, so it's going to have a red center. A log cabin quilt with a black center in it is a sign that this is a safe place to stop. You will get help here if there's a log cabin block with black centers in it. I have a log cabin quilt that I hang out on my rail out front with my black center in it. I have a neighbor who told me all the time, I love that quilt. I love that quilt. I'd love to make a quilt like that. I never ever said anything to her about it because I don't know for sure if I can trust my neighbor. She might just turn me in. So one night, I go to bed, it's a stormy, rainy night, lightning, thunder, everything. I go to bed, and I get up the next morning, and there's water just running down the porch and everything, and my neighbor's over at my house bright and early knocking on my door. And she's like, Abigail, you just don't know what happened last night. And I'm like, what? What happened last night? Well, in the middle of the night, someone came up and knocked on my door. Okay, why would, she said, I don't know why they came, but somebody came and knocked on my door in the middle of the night. I said, did you let them in? Yes. I opened the door because I thought it might be another neighbor who needed help or something, so I opened the door and I let them in. And I'm, okay, what she said, it was 3 slaves. They were trying to escape. And one of them was a lady who was pregnant, and we delivered a baby last night at my house because she was just ready to deliver, and it happened at my house last night in all that storm. She said, I couldn't turn them out in that storm. I couldn't. And I said, well, what did you do? She said, well, I kept them all night. I fed them, and they're asleep at my house now. And I said, oh, you probably should maybe make sure they're hidden in case somebody, she said, I know, that's why I came to talk to you. I don't know what to do. And I'm thinking, why does she think she should come talk to me? Does she suspect something? I said, well, why? She said, I don't know why they came to my house. I said, okay. So I said, well, let's see if we can't do something to, I think we need to hide them because you do not want to get caught with these people at your house. So I help her. I go over to her house, and guess what's hanging on her front rail? Yeah, she has a log cabin quilt with black centers in it, hanging on her front rail. And I asked her, I said, where did this come from? How did you get this? She said, I always have liked yours. I always wanted one, so I made me one. And I hung it out last night, and I forgot and left it when it started raining. She had a signal out. I didn't have a signal out that night. She had a signal out. So she can definitely be trusted. I finally confided in her as to why they chose her house. After I knew that she had taken care of them all night, and I figured she was on our side. And so she now is part of our Underground Railroad. But she had no idea what she was doing when she made the quilt with the black centers. But that is a big sign if you have you have a log cabin quilt. If you put black centers in it, that is one of the signs that people hang out to say, this is a safe house. This is a place you can get help. There is a doctor in Philadelphia that has one that has yellow centers in it instead of red or black. And the yellow centers, he said, we don't know, but he says the yellow centers means that not that this is a safe place to come, but that he is a person who will help. So I'm not sure how he displays it for people to know that, but he has one that has yellow centers. And he says it means it. This one is called a shoe fly quilt. and you can see just everywhere around. So the shoe fly quilt is it just means that you're going to need to flip around from place to place. Don't go in any straight path, don't go and flip from place to place, like a flock paint. The next one is a bow tie quilt. And the bow tie quilt is usually shown when you're getting closer to the larger cities, farther north, and because think about it, our friends have been traveling for sometimes months on very little food, sleeping in the woods a lot. The clothing they left with probably was tattered and torn before they ever left. So if they've not gotten new clothing, or even if they have gotten new clothing along the way, they probably look pretty rough. So if you're going to not stand out when you go through these larger towns, you need to have buttons and bows, or you need to dress up, you need to try and find clothing that will not make you stand out so bad. So a lot of our people that are on our Underground Railroad in those areas will be providing clothing for them that will make them fit in. Because by this time, there are lots of states where they are free states, and they're not going to be the only African Americans there. They're going to be more, and they will just blend in and mingle along with everybody else. The next one is really interesting too. This one is called the Flying Geese. And you can see the flying geese go in all four directions. We have east, west, north, and south on here. But you can make one where all the geese point in one direction. Or maybe you're even making this same block just like mine, but let's say all the ones that point north or south or east or west, whichever direction you want to guide them, are the same color. All the rest of them are all mixed up, but all one color can be pointing in a certain direction. So they can be used as a signal to guide them to the next spot. They also, we call these escaped slaves flying geese quite often when we're talking. Because we kind of have to talk in code to keep from letting people know what we're talking about. I write letters to some of my family that live in the South. I sent a letter recently and I said, oh, by the way, there was a family of 7 geese that flew through here 2 days ago. Went on about it. They're headed north now. And I got a letter back later that said, oh yes, we had a family of 7 geese that went through here not too long ago too. We were talking about the same 7 people. We're moving them on, we can talk about them. And if someone, because they do open our letters and read our letters. So we can talk like that and people are just like, wow, they're boring. They talk about geese in their letters. That's what they tell each other about. But it's a way to do that. It's also just like the bears. When do the geese fly north? In the springtime. When do they fly south? And so, take it from the creatures of nature. When they travel, when they move, and where they move. Another one is the drunkard's path that you might see out. The drunkard's path is like the shoe fly. Don't ever travel in a straight path. Travel back and forth, side to side. You may even go backtrack because that's going to cover your tracks. It's going to cover your scent. It's going to be a much better way. Don't ever travel in a straight line. So when this is one, when they see it, it means, reminds them not to travel in straight lines. And the next one we're going to talk about is next to the inn, but it's the sailboat. When they made it to Lake Erie has a lot of people who have boats, they are escaped slaves, that have made it and have either worked on or bought boats once they got that far. There are a lot of people that may not own them but do work on the boats. It's a good way for them to get passage across Lake Erie and into Canada, because those people, they're on their side. They know they're on their side and they've been there, a lot of them have. So it's a way for them to safely travel, because no matter how free all of our northern states are, they're not safe until they get to Canada. So that a lot of them will travel. It will be look for the boats. But another thing with the boats, and it kind of also goes back even to my son that pulled the wagon around. Another way that we refer to the escaped slaves is as the men are called hardware. The men are hardware and the women are dry goods. And so it's another way to talk to people, to converse with people out in front of anybody else. And, you can say, oh, have you, how much dry goods have you traveled with lately? Or have you taken a lot of hardware north lately? Or have you taken all of it south or whatever? And if you are part of our system, you know that hardware is men and dry goods are women. So it's another way to talk about it and refer to it. The last one, of course, is the North Star. This is how we're going to watch for the North Star the whole time we're traveling. We're going to watch for them and use that as a guide. But once you they refer to Canada as the North Star also. That's, if we're going to the North Star, we're going to go to Canada. So that's one of the places, and that's one of the last ones. When we talked about places to hide, a lot of people who have farms may have brush piles out from their barn or from their house or something, and quite often there's an entrance to a tunnel in that brush pile. You can get people in and out without them actually coming in and out at your own home. That has happened many times when there are people at your home suspecting you, checking to see if you're hiding someone, and you may have somebody when they come to the door. But you can get them out through the barn, through the tunnels, through the cellars, through whatever, out into the field over on the north side, and they can come out under the brush, or they can come out on the edge of a river bank or a creek bank and get them hidden and get them away in some, in some manner like that. So there's a lot of different, ways we won't even suspect or wouldn't even think of that people have used to help hide or transport. We were all so impressed with our preacher, with his people on the wagon. We just thought that was the greatest idea in the world when he came up with that, because nobody suspected that. Okay, so I'm out of character. I try to do my whole presentation in character, and then I come out and for questions and things. I am Donna Schultz, so Donna Schultz has been here both times, as Abigail Stanley and Donna Schultz. But I created this character when I was still teaching. I taught at Patoka, for most of you that know the area. I taught at Patoka for 16 years. And I was in a cohort, an educational cohort. We were part of the we were in it for 4 years, and we had to come up with a first-person character that we presented, and had to bring it back and present it to our kids at school. And they told us it could be any person in the world from history, but pick something you like. Pick something that's interesting to you, and create your character from that. I've always been fascinated with the Underground Railroad, and I know how much of it comes through this area. And I love quilting, and I've always been fascinated with quilting. I did not at that time know there was any connection to quilting and the Underground Railroad. But I did a little research, and I found this book. This book is now out of print, but sometimes you can still find it on Amazon. It is called Hidden in Plain View: A Secret Story of Quilts and the Underground Railroad. This book is written by a man who was a professor at a college, and he was told by 2 or 3 different people about a lady named Ozella McDaniel Williams. She was an African-American quilter. And she grew up with her grandmother telling her these stories about how they used these quilts and these quilt blocks for her whole life. And she said, my grandmother did not make these stories up. And there were lots of other women who told her, yes, this is true. My family has passed those stories down to me from generation to generation to generation. Also, all these ladies didn't make it up. It really did exist. Because there's a lot of people, there are a lot of critics out there that say this is all just a big made up hoax and none of it really is true. None of it really goes together. But when you stop and think about it, the information about the monkey wrench, the blacksmith, so many of them. I mean, the blacksmith would pass information just by how he pounded on the anvil. He could do faster, slower, he could make, and people understood what he was trying, the information he was trying to pass. So, I think it's true, I think they've got enough information in here that I really feel like it really was used. Maybe not all the time, but it was used in a lot of ways. And so this professor decided, hey, they really got something here, and I want to go interview this lady and talk to her, and he took lots of notes, and he wrote this book about it. But she began to tell a story that had been passed from generation to generation in her family, and as soon as she began, she stopped informing him that he would learn the rest when she was ready. So she told it to him in little increments and bits and pieces, so he had to keep coming back. And that's the biggest critics say there's nothing written. Well, in that time period, there wasn't written. It was handed down from generation to generation by stories they were telling. They told their families about it, and then the next generation told their family about it, and it just kept going like that. So that's how it was handed down. I read the book. It's a fantastic, really interesting book, and it's all about this. Like I said, I taught 4th, 5th, and 6th grade at the time that I did this, and 4th grade is Indiana history. So I would do my character, the kids would all make their own character, and we would have, we did 4th, 5th, and 6th. My 4th graders had to have an Indiana person, my 5th graders had to have a U.S. person, and my 6th graders could have a world person. Those kids researched their person. They had to be able to do a 3-minute speech about their person. If they didn't want to dress up, they could decorate a t-shirt for their person. And we had them all stand all the way around the whole outside of the gym. And we had a night where parents were invited in, and we did our living history museum. And they would come stand in front of them. They had to give their little 3-minute spiel. You went on to the next one. And they walked around the gym and found out all kinds of things that the adults didn't know about Indiana, U.S., and world people. Those kids loved it. It was a lot of fun. And probably one of the most important things that I got from it, my dad told me when he came and listened to it, and my dad said, Donna, the little guy who was Gus Grissom when he's 40 years old is going to know all about what he learned about Gus Grissom when he was in 4th grade. And same thing about each one of those characters, because they picked somebody that they liked. And, so they learned about it, they found out information. So it was really cool. We were very well trained. We had people from Crawford Prairie who came down several times and worked with us and told us all kinds of information. And one of the things they told us was, I'm not going to wear any earrings. I'm not going to wear a watch. I'm not going to wear things that would not be authentic to my time period. And here I stand in front of you in a pair of bright pink tennis shoes. I hurt my ankle and I can't get the boots on, so it's not going to work today. I told John before I started, I said I apologize because I'm going to be out of character partially because I can't get the boot over the ankle. So sometimes we have to go a little out of character. But it just was a really neat thing to do. And when I got into it, I really enjoyed it. And it became a little more than just, I did this for my school project. And I had people asking, would you present? So I have kind of become sort of a presenter. I go out and have done it a lot for a lot of different groups and a lot of interesting choices I would have thought people would say, oh, will you come do it for us? And I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have ever thought you would have been interested, but they do. It's a really good thing. Some of the things also that kind of reinforce it to me, when I was still teaching, I found lots and lots and lots of children's books that were written about the Underground Railroad and escapes. And one of them is called Under the Quilt of Night. And it's all about what they do, a little girl who escapes, and how she's hunting and finding things, and step by step what she's doing. There is another children's book that it tells about a lady who was a grandmother that knew she was too old and would never be able to make the escape, but she made a quilt. She was lucky enough to work in the big house, and she had access. She sewed their sheets and their kitchen towels and things like that, and the plantation lady would give her pieces of fabric. So she collected those pieces of fabric and she sewed a quilt from sitting in the kitchen and listening when people came and went about where the rivers were and where the streams were and things. And she sewed rivers, fields, plantation houses into the quilt to give to her son and grandchildren for them to use as an escape route. So, a lot of stuff is out there. Another one that's really interesting is called Henry's Freedom Box. This one really has nothing to do with quilts, but it's really cool. Henry Box Brown escaped to Philadelphia. He was mailed to Philadelphia in a crate with food and water. And there was a doctor in Philadelphia who knew he was coming, and that was where he was shipped to. But they nailed him in a crate with food and water, and he was a little boy. And then he continued to live with that doctor the rest of his life. But that was how he escaped. That was how he made it. So just, so many different interesting things and ways that people have escaped. The quilt itself is made from a book called Quilt in a Day by Eleanor Burns. And it is all of these blocks, and it has the story, like I just told you, about each one of the blocks, how the blocks were used and things like that. And this was one of the first things too. I found this book and it was like, okay, there's my time. There's my way to use both of them. So any questions? Yes?
How did the picture language get started? Who started it to start passing it along?
That's a very good question. And I can't answer it. I don't know. They do believe it probably was started though by slaves, and they started making their own inferences to each of these or to different things, and then it probably was expanded upon by the people who were part of the Underground Railroad who helped them to escape. Just like that first one, the monkey wrench. He was one they knew they needed to talk to, that they needed to get information from, so that was probably one that they started and then moved from there.
I didn't know if it'd be the slave or it'd be the helpers that developed it.
I think it was probably a combination of both, yeah. But they probably started it and then expanded on it. Yes?
The third one there,
I didn't do that one.
I know, it's like, my mother used it.
This one is
like
called,
Dresden, like-
it's called a carpenter's wheel.
Okay.
And it went along with the basket, like if you could, which we know they didn't have wagons, but carpenter's wheel is getting ready. Get your stuff ready, start loading things, start planning what you can take with you. But yeah, that one's a carpenter's wheel.
And I've also read where, like, this braiding that they use was also like the channels and like the rivers and the lakes, and it was a map as we know it.
I have heard
But
that
it
too.
was- Yeah.
Yeah, because that would be a very, very detailed and very delicate, but yes, it was a way for them to pass information and not be suspected.
And in the South, on those picket fences, I know the hobos have like their own little trails, like where you can get fresh water, where there's this, where there's that, and you look at some of those old, you get Mississippi down.
Right.
They have that trail.
And that's their own, it's their own language, yeah, it's their language, and they all knew it. And-
Yeah.
And that's kind of how they said with these, they, after after a few of them had used it, then it spread very quickly and everybody knew it and understood what they were looking for and what it was, what they meant.
So in Crawford County, you say Fredonia, Alton, and then in Leavenworth,
Mhm.
can people know the sites? I mean, is there any way to recognize where people came or, and then where did they go from here?
Probably most of them are gone. The one house that I was talking about was down around Leavenworth and it's been destroyed.
Oh, yeah.
It was dilapidated and it was destroyed. A lot of them went through Orange County. There is a place in Orange County called Little Africa.
Oh, yeah.
And there were a lot of people, that went through that area. They just like the drunkard's path and the bear paws, it wasn't like there was a trail. You worked for this one trail and hunted for that and got there and went on that trail, because it was too likely to be caught. So they just were scattered and spread wherever there were people to help transport them or to guide them to the next station. There were lots and lots of homes, like my character's home, and my character might not have always sent them to the same place for the next stop.
Okay.
They would have spread them out so that people would have been watching that one area. But
And that
yeah,
little Africa, is that why it's named that? Because there were people who were
it
sent
is,
there?
isn't it, Roger? That's what I've always been told.
That's the case, and there was a time when folks said you shouldn't use that term, you should use something else, and it was, that's what it was, they started calling Lake Creek Settlement.
Yeah.
But I've heard of a lot in recent years that, families who are descended from those folks
Yeah.
prefer the term Little Africa.
Yeah, and there's a place over towards the eastern edge of Indiana, that is called Freedom. And it was a town that a lot of them settled in and stayed, even though they knew they could still be brought back. That was a settlement, and because there were some there already, and they knew once they got to there, they would be taken care of, they would help them, and a lot of them chose to stay. When I was teaching second grade, there was a story in our second grade reader that was all about Freedom, Indiana. And it talked about all of that, and it was based on true facts. So they just, over the whole Evansville, the whole area, and then they were just scattered when they moved on north. The fourth grade history book used to have a map in it, and it showed where people crossed the Ohio River. And Madison, Albany, Leavenworth, Evansville were all marked on that map. Yeah. It was really little, you had to really look for it. It was there.
Well, it's like Aurora, Indiana, they have those caves that come off the river and it goes up to Hillcrest.
Mhm.
There's still evidence that those caves are going to have them all marked.
Right.
There's
There's a-
Hillcrest.
There's a church in New Albany that underneath it, and you used to be able to tour it, but you can't anymore. What I've heard is that the mud and silt has filled in so much that it's not near as deep underneath there as it used to be. Yeah. And Pam and Dave know information about the Marengo Springtown Church too.
Yeah, the oral history is it was a station on an underground railroad.
Yeah.
And the room is still there.
Yeah.
Where's this at? Ringo.
The church that's by the cemetery over in Old Town.
Big Springs Old Town Church.
Matt, did you ever know, is it Carl Chanley? Is that who I'm trying to think about? Used to live at Alton?
He did, yes.
Okay, I was talking to him at the library where I worked at one time, and he said he's trying to discover he almost knew where some of those places were in Crawford County, but he said he couldn't swear to it. We just had the best talk. He's trying to check in on it, and he passed away within a year after that.
I've heard lots of people from that area that were just like Carl, who were trying to pinpoint the exact locations, and most of them never were able to, but had very high suspicions of certain places that it had been.
It was so secretive.
Yes, it had to be. Yeah, it had to be. Because they did. Many people lost everything they owned or were put in jail, and some of them were killed for helping if they got caught.
There was
Yes, there was. And, you know, you have to really, really respect the people who went through that fear, but still said, you know, I have to help. I can't live with myself if I don't help.
For instance, a fight for the slaves, meaning for the purpose of helping that slave.
Right,
They got to Indiana, they joined the Civil War.
yeah.
They went off, they left their family, they came back to their family, left their clothes outside. That's my story that I carry. Left
Yeah.
their clothes outside,
Uh-huh,
had clean clothes brought to them.
many times. Many times that happened. Yes,
I read where the slaves, when they were gonna have a certain night they were gonna flee, they would sing a certain song,
there were,
and that was a sign, tonight we leave.
tonight is it, yeah. They used a lot of songs as symbols and signals for them,
Uh-huh.
because they understood those, and they all knew what they meant. And that was used a lot, yes, very much.
One last question?
Donna, this was really interesting.
Oh, thank you, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yep, we've got one back there.
Okay.
Just a comment that I accidentally
She's got the
something
book.
else, came across it just a couple weeks ago before I knew about this. So you can get this on Amazon right now. It was like $7 or $8.
Yeah, when I got mine, it was out of print already too, and I had some other people who've been able to get it at different times. Sometimes it'll say none available, and other times you can catch one.
It's just a couple weeks ago. So,
Yeah,
so
good.
right now, maybe a good time.
Yeah. I do have a few business cards up here if anybody's interested, but yeah, this, and you can look at the books and the quilts and anything else, I'll be here.
Well, Abigail, or Donna, we are so glad to have you here. Hey, have you learned some things tonight? And if you sort of take yourself back to that time and the character you were trying to express to us here, you had to be brave, hold by what was right and true and
They
good.
did.
So thanks for telling us about the best in us tonight. And let's all